The sky over the Wyoming plains was bruised with the fading colors of sunset, gold melting into rose, then into the deepening blue of night. The wind carried the scent of rain and the dry whisper of prairie grass. Along that lonely dirt road, a single rider approached, his horse moving slow, hooves kicking dust that hung in the air like smoke. His name was Colt Avery, a quiet cowboy with eyes like storm clouds, a man who had known loss so deeply that it had carved silence into his soul. He'd been riding for weeks, heading nowhere in particular, just following the wind and the ache that had long since become his only companion. But on this night something changed. He saw her. At first, she was just a figure standing near the crossroads, her arms wrapped around two small children. Her dress was torn and faded, her hair tangled by wind, her face half hidden under a worn bonnet. The boy beside her, no more than 6, held her skirt tightly, while the younger girl clung to a small rag doll pressed against her chest. The cowboy slowed his horse, sensing something in the stillness, not danger, but despair. As he approached, she lifted her head, and even in the fading light he saw the fear in her eyes. She looked like someone who had run out of road, someone who had reached the edge of every hope she'd ever had. He tipped his hat politely, his voice low and rough from the trail. "Evening, ma'am," he said. She didn't answer at first. Then her voice broke through the wind, soft but shaking. "Please," she whispered, "take my children." The words hit him harder than any bullet could have. He froze, reins tight in his hands, trying to make sense of what he'd just heard. Her eyes filled with tears, and the little girl began to cry quietly, clutching her mother's dress. "I can't feed them," she said. "I can't protect them anymore. Men from town are coming. They said they'd take them if I don't pay what my husband owed. Please take them before they come." She fell to her knees, her hands trembling, her voice breaking completely. The cowboy dismounted slowly, dust swirling around his boots, and knelt beside her. He saw now the bruises on her arms, the exhaustion in her face, the look of a woman who had fought too long and lost too much. He didn't know her name, but he knew her pain. Years ago he'd lost his own family, a wife taken by fever, a son taken by hunger in a winter too cold for mercy. He had buried them both with his bare hands and sworn never to let anyone close again. But here she was, this stranger on the road, begging him to save her children from the kind of darkness he knew too well. He wanted to say no. He wanted to walk away, keep his distance, protect what was left of his heart. But something inside him shifted, like the crack of dawn breaking over a frozen land. He took her hand and said quietly, "Ma'am, I won't take your children, but I'll take all of you. You and them. You're coming with me." She blinked in shock, confusion, and hope mixing in her tear-streaked eyes. "Why would you help us?" she asked. His voice came low, steady. "Because someone once should have helped me and didn't." That night he led them back to his small ranch tucked deep in the valley, where the mountains stood like silent guardians and the river ran cold and clear. The cabin was simple, wooden walls weathered by time, a single fire burning in the hearth. He gave them his bed, sleeping himself on a blanket near the fire. The children ate like they hadn't eaten in days, and the woman, her name he learned, was Clara, sat quietly, her hands trembling around a chipped mug of water. She watched him with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief, as if afraid that come morning he'd disappear like a dream too kind to last. But he didn't. The days that followed were slow, steady, and healing in ways none of them had expected. Colt repaired the broken fence and taught the boy, Tommy, how to feed the horses and fetch water from the well. The little girl, June, followed him everywhere, her laughter soft and timid at first, but growing brighter each day. Clara helped around the house, cooking what little they had, mending old clothes, finding purpose in work and safety in the cowboy's quiet strength. He never asked about her past, but he saw the nightmares in her eyes whenever thunder rolled across the hills. Some nights she'd sit by the fire long after the children slept, staring into the flames as if afraid of the silence, and he'd just sit beside her, saying nothing, because sometimes Silence was the only kind of comfort that didn't hurt. But peace in the west never lasted long. One evening, as the sky turned red with sunset, a wagon appeared on the horizon, two men riding hard, dust trailing behind like smoke. Clara froze when she saw them. "They found us," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The cowboy stepped outside, hand resting on his revolver, calm but ready. The men pulled their horses to a stop at the gate, grinning with arrogance. One spat on the ground. "We've come for the woman and her brats," he said. "Her man owed us money and we're here to collect." Colt's gaze didn't waver. "You've got no claim here," he said evenly. "You turn around and ride out before I decide you don't leave at all." The taller man laughed, showing yellow teeth. "You gonna fight us over someone else's debt, cowboy?" Colt took a slow step forward. "Ain't about debt," he said. "It's about right and wrong. You cross that gate, you'll regret it." The air went still. For a heartbeat, no one moved. And then one of the men reached for his gun. But Colt was faster. A single shot cracked across the field, echoing off the mountains. The man's pistol flew from his hand, clattering into the dust. Colt's voice came low, like thunder about to break. "Next shot don't miss." The men hesitated, rage flickering in their eyes. But something in his stance, the steel of a man who'd lost too much to be afraid, made them back down. They spat curses and rode away, their wagon vanishing into the dusk. When he turned back toward the cabin, Clara was standing in the doorway, tears in her eyes, children clinging to her skirt. She whispered, "You didn't have to do that." He looked at her quietly. "Yeah," he said, "I did." That night, after the danger had passed, the rain came, soft and steady, washing the dust from the world. Inside the cabin, the fire glowed warm. Clara tucked the children into bed, then stood by the window, watching the storm. Colt joined her, his hat in his hands, rain tapping against the glass. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You gave us our lives back." He shook his head slowly. "No, ma'am. You gave me mine." In the weeks that followed, something began to grow between them. Something quiet, like spring grass after a long winter. Clara smiled more. The children laughed louder. Colt found himself waking up before dawn just to see them safe, just to hear their voices fill the emptiness that had once been his only company. He'd never thought he'd feel at home again. But every time June ran to him, with her tiny arms outstretched, or Tommy looked up to him, with trust shining in his eyes, he felt something heal inside his chest. And when Clara's hand brushed his, accidentally, then intentionally, he knew that this, whatever it was something sacred. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, Clara sat beside him on the porch, the sky painted in colors too beautiful to describe. "You could have left us," she said quietly. "You didn't owe us anything." He smiled faintly, eyes on the horizon. "Maybe I didn't," he said. "But maybe I needed to stay as much as you needed saving." She turned to him, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Do you believe people get second chances?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment, then said, "I think sometimes second chances come disguised as people." From then on, life on the ranch changed completely. The laughter of children filled the air, the sound of hope echoing across the valley. Clara started planting a small garden by the fence, her hands in the earth, her heart finally steady. Tommy began calling the cowboy Pa when he thought no one was listening, and Colt never corrected him. June braided flowers into his horse's mane, saying it made the mare look happy. And for the first time in years, Colt Avery, the lonely rider, the quiet drifter, the man who had lost everything, felt whole again. Seasons passed. The snow came and went, the fields bloomed, and the world turned quietly around them. Some nights, when the stars burned bright and the wind whispered across the plains, Clara would sit on the porch beside him, her head resting against his shoulder. They didn't need words. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of peace, love, and the kind of understanding that only comes from shared pain. Years later, people in the nearby town would still tell stories about the cowboy who stood against 2 men to protect a mother and her children. They said his eyes were like storms and his heart was made of iron and gold. But the real story wasn't about his gun or his courage. It was about the choice he made that day at the crossroads. The choice to stay, the choice to care, the choice that changed not just their lives but his own. Because in the end, "Take my children," she had begged. But the cowboy had given them something much greater. He gave them a home. He gave them safety. He gave them a family. And in doing so, he found the piece of his soul he thought was gone forever. So if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even the hardest hearts can still find light, that kindness can rebuild what life has broken, then don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Because out here every story has a heartbeat, every cowboy carries a lesson, and every act of love reminds us, sometimes saving others is how we finally save ourselves.